Kaufman Corner Podcast is back at it here on a Sunday night. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast, you can be a part of the conversation when we stream live Sunday nights at 9 o'clock. With you, as always, is me, Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. With you quite a bit is David Lesky from Inside the Crown. He pinch hits tonight for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. We've got a lot to get to, including an announcement we'll make here coming up in a couple of minutes about the Kaufman Corner podcast. But the baseball that we will talk about, biggest takeaways from the opening series with the Guardians, is the bullpen being deployed properly? How about shuffling the positions? Is it working? Do they need to tweak something? India in left field, do we like it? Are the Royals getting quality at bats? They continue to die hard. That's a good thing. Torpedo Bats, what are they? What does it mean for the Royals? Plus, we'll look ahead to the schedule that is this week. Milwaukee on the road, and then coming home for the Baltimore Orioles. We are talking about it right now here on the Kaufman Corner Podcast.
You're listening to the Kaufman Corner Podcast, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany on the Royals, and a former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by David Starnes Allstate Insurance, covering all the important things in your world. Home, business, life, and even the fun stuff as well. Motorcycle, boat, ATV, you name it, get with Dave and he'll have you covered. Give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. And now, here are your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
Well, not quite. Right? Not quite. The good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, on the road. He is traveling, and will be back with us here next week on Sunday night at 9 o'clock. We are fortunate enough to have one David Lesky from Inside the Crown, his great blog covering Kansas City Royals baseball. David, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. And we have a bit of an announcement we want to make. First off, number one, like we said, Rany will be back next Sunday. But before that, you will see one David Lesky with us, along with Les Norman, former Royals outfielder, does some great analysis for us on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City, the radio station I work for. If you catch us via the podcast, are not familiar with my work. And Les played with the Royals and has covered baseball for many, many years. And looking forward to Thursday mornings. We have a couple of on our Red, Gold, and Bold podcast. We do a couple each week. We've had people asking for why we don't have a second Kaufman Corner podcast. We will, beginning on Thursday. So, David, first of all, on that front, we kind of launched that. You and I, it's 2/3 of what we'll do on Thursdays. David has pinch hit for Rany Jazayerli on a number of occasions, and even for me on an occasion or two. So he's our go-to guy for all things Royals. First of all, looking forward to the new podcast with you and with Les every Thursday. And great to be talking some Royals baseball in season right now with you.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I'm really excited about it because, you know, we talk every week on 810, but get a little more in depth on this podcast. And it's always, you know, I walk away when I pinch hit on Sundays and always think, God, we should do more of that. And so we're going to do more of it. Pretty simple, right? We should do more of it, and we are.
Yeah, and we get great feedback. David and I do a segment every Monday on the radio show in the 5 o'clock hour during baseball season. We'll be doing that tomorrow. That continues as well, and people love it. And so we're going to give you more. I don't know when you have too much, let us know, and we may or may not quit. I kind of think we won't, but you know, we might. You know, send all complaints. Send all complaints to Mars. Because we don't want to hear it right now. I'll be honest. We don't have time for it. Too many good things going on, and there's a lot going on with the Royals, so we'll dive right into it. And let's talk about just your opening takeaways It's one series, one game. We've discussed it many times. You open that opening day game gets broken down like it's a Chiefs Sunday or a Chiefs playoff game, even the way the gross overreactions. So then you get the second game that kind of calms some people down. In this case, it was a loss and then a win. And then the third game, people are a little bit more mellow in the reactions, but still maybe a little bit like an opening game for the Chiefs after just one series. What's your overall impression coming away from that first series?
Yeah, I mean the thing about baseball, you said it, but anything 3 games, do they mean anything? Yes, I mean they mean something because they happened, but at the same time, baseball is so unpredictable over the course of 162 games that you're going to lose series and you're going to look a little bit lethargic and a little bit bad. The big takeaway for me is a lot of the issues that people thought, oh, this could be a problem, kind of all came up at once in one series, which I think makes people a little bit more likely to read into it a little bit more. The outfield didn't field well. The starting pitching regressed a little bit. Can you really say they regressed in 3 games? I don't know. Maybe not. But they had a rough 3 games. I mean, they only threw 14 innings total. Last year in the first 3 games, they threw 19 innings total. They gave up, I've written down 10 hits in 3 games last year, two runs total, 23 strikeouts. I think it was 5 walks, 6 walks. This year, 14 innings, 13 hits, 7 runs, 9 strikeouts. It was a regression from first weekend to first weekend last year. So I think that all these issues that people think, okay, this could be a problem, they all were a problem, which I think is kind of a confirmation bias, kind of a, could this be a problem all season long? My viewpoint, and this is the really boring answer, we'll see, because you just can't know yet. I mean, this is a team that went from 56 wins to 86 wins last year, probably should have won a few more. And I think they deserve a little benefit of the doubt, but there are some concerns. There are some concerns from this first weekend.
I think you put it very well. I mean, I like the way you started that in the sense that, the things we thought we would be discussing, we're discussing, right? I mean, I think that's it. We expected a bit of a regression when it came to the starting pitching. We've seen it. We knew the outfield was a question mark. We've seen that. We knew it was going to be perhaps a work in progress when it came to moving guys around. We've seen that. So I certainly don't think there's anything to panic about. I've seen a baseball series. That's what I've seen. I haven't seen anything that says, oh my God, I think, I guess my biggest takeaway would be that pitching is fickle, right? And so we'll see where we go from here. We know that they were awfully healthy, but we also know that everybody kind of had a career year. So you expect some regression. I felt like they were going to have to leave. It meant that Chris Bubic was going to need to be key. One of my bold and daring predictions was for Chris Bubic to step up into being one of the top 2 starters for the Royals. I think that's going to need to happen because I just think there'll be some natural regression from some of the other guys, and we're going to find that out when he goes in the next game. We haven't had a chance to see him. I felt pretty good about the back end of the bullpen. Still do. That looked pretty good. Bobby Witt Jr.'s, I don't know if it's his worst month, but it's close to it. If it's not, it's certainly one of his slower months, is always this opener. So the lineup looks different when you don't have a red-hot MVP caliber Bobby Witt. You just have a regular good player, Bobby Witt, which is what he kind of is. It seems like in March and April, that's been the story for his career. So I see nothing to panic over. I see what we thought it was going to look like. I had hope when we heard about a new swing for MJ Melendez, but the strikeouts he had in spring training erased that. So I didn't think there was a big answer there. And so, yeah, I mean, it's what I thought. The Guardians are feisty. They always are. You're going to have to go claw for 9 innings with them if you're going to get wins and onward and upward. I do, I guess maybe, and we'll talk about this a little bit later on when we discuss the schedule that's coming up later. But I do have some concerns that the schedule last year, I thought they were able to get off to a good start. I thought there were some things that, were easier in the schedule. This schedule's kind of rough. And I do concern myself if they have some regular baseball series, which is all I saw here. I didn't see anything that anybody needs to be talking about getting fired. If you have some regular baseball series and you lose 2 out of 3, then you lose 2 out of 3, and then you lose 2 out of 3, And then all of a sudden you're 3-6, and now people are starting to get nervous. They're starting to be chatter. There starts to be pressure that they did not have at all last year. We can look back to 2 years ago, David, and say, boy, that team just sucked. Borrow the Homer Simpson line. Boy, those guys, they just suck. They're the suckiest bunch of sucks that ever sucked, right? It looked like, well, that's just what they were going to be. But I do wonder, when you see how good they were the following year, it seems like they clearly underachieved 2 years ago. Would that be fair to say, when so many of the same guys were part of turning the corner? Many guys weren't. There were wholesale changes. I want to be clear. I understand we saw the value of starting pitching and acquiring a Reagans and getting Walker and getting Lugo. But, I mean, I do think that there's probably a mild underachievement, and I just wonder if it snowballed and it went south, that this is a team that is forever going to be, as a small market club, you're going to be susceptible to the mood. You need a good mood, and it will build on itself. If you have a bad mood, it'll build on itself. That's my only concern. But at 1-2, they were 2-4 last year.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Yeah. They might have started. If you thought they started 6-0 and that was the key to success, it wasn't. So I think I just saw a regular baseball series here.
Yeah, I mean, I was just saying they went 2-4 last year. They lost 2 games in Baltimore in absolutely demoralizing fashion. It was Will Smith blew a save, and then they almost blew a second save, if I'm remembering correctly. I mean, it was a pretty bad series in Baltimore that got them down to 2-4 after they started 1-2 against the Twins. So I'm not terribly concerned about 2-4 or 3-6 even, but yeah, you're right. I mean, look at the schedule. I just pulled it up. They go to Milwaukee. Milwaukee's a good team. They got just absolutely massacred by the Yankees, but I think they're still a pretty good team. Baltimore comes in, good team. Twins come in. I think the Twins are the most talented team in the division. I don't know that they're best, but they're the most talented in my opinion. I believe, and then let's see. They go to Cleveland, obviously good. They go to New York, obviously good. Detroit, obviously good. That's what, 23 games, assuming no rainouts, and they could be in trouble. They could be in absolute trouble. And I don't think they will be. I think that if they get through that, 11-12, 10-13, I think that's very doable. But yeah, I mean, if they get through that, it's 9-14. That could torpedo pretty quickly. Now they do. What do they go? Colorado next, is that right? Yeah, it's Colorado, and then home for Houston, which we don't know how good Houston is or not yet. Then at Tampa, at Baltimore. I mean, it doesn't get easier. They don't really have their first series against a non-playoff team and non-contender is the Rockies. Then they get the White Sox. It's not a lot of series against teams that aren't going to be good. So they're going to need to get a little run going. They don't have the 4-game series against the White Sox that they had last year to get right. Because when they went 2-4, they came home for 4 against the White Sox and they swept it. And then they won. Did they win the next 3 against Houston? Yeah, I think they won. That was their 7-game winning streak. They were 9-4. They were never under 500 again. So it was, yeah. I mean that did it, and they don't have that this year right away. They get down the road a little bit. So if they can tread water, they'll be okay. But there is a concern for me that if the start is way too slow, it could be a problem.
Yeah, and a couple of notes from the chat room. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember when you're part of the streaming, you can be part of the conversation as well. Kurt says, I agree. It's only one series, but bad that the things that were bad last year all showed up so far. And one of those things is Tyler said the bullpen has looked shaky from the start. If you're not named Ursig or Estevez, they have struggled. Yes, let's talk about the bullpen. Is it being deployed properly? The big 3 at the end, we felt pretty good if Hunter Renfroe's healthy. Or Hunter Harvey's healthy. Then you had Hunter Harvey.
Maybe Renfroe should pitch.
Maybe he should. Lucas Ersteg and Carlos Estevez, that you felt, okay, we feel pretty good about that back end. And in the second game on Friday, they did what you wanted to see, right? Like that's what you wanted to look like. And so we'll see. They're going to get more opportunities. Daniel Lynch has looked good in his outing. Looked like he picked up right where he left off with his great finish to the year out of the bullpen. So that's a positive. Outside of that, I thought one of the reasons why I felt like maybe they would, battle through this tougher schedule and still perhaps be above 500 coming out was that I thought the bullpen was going to be better. And it still might be. It's early, but Sam Long has not been good.
Mm-hmm.
The guys that we kind of had question marks, we still have question marks about.
Yeah, and I mean, Sam Long had a bad spring, and he didn't pitch much early. I don't remember. Was there an injury that they didn't talk about? Do you remember? Because he only threw like an inning in the first couple weeks of spring. Might have been on the backfield. Who knows? But yeah, Long had a rough spring. Chris Stratton had a really bad 2024, and he's back on the roster, and he didn't look good today. John Schreiber had moments of shakiness. I mean, I think if you can find 4 guys you can count on out of the 8, and then I always look at it as you want 4 guys you can count on, 2 guys who you feel good about but are going to give up some runs occasionally, and then 2 guys who you throw in blowouts. And you want 8 great guys, of course, but those 2 guys may not be so great. And I think that if you look at the big 3, Estevez, Urseg, and Harvey, they've been really good. It's 3 games, 2 games really for all of them actually. But Daniel Lynch looked really good yesterday. I think you feel probably, I know Serpa gave up the home run and got hit around on Thursday on opening day, but I think you feel like Serpa and Schreiber can be those 2 who are going to give it up occasionally, but you feel pretty good about most days. It's just a question of then how bad does it get for the Stratton and Long group. And the good news for the Royals is they've got a lot of options. I mean, a bunch of guys who could have made the team out of spring training and didn't. Jonathan Bolin, Steven Cruz, Evan Sisk. I'm going to miss a few guys, so I'm not going to go any further. But there are options out there. And Alec Marsh could come back, and maybe he could be the guy who pitches some bulk innings out of the bullpen if they don't put him in AAA. Kyle Wright, I'm not going to count on him until I see him on a mound against in a game situation, but he could be a guy too. So there are options that they can make these shuffling moves with. And the thing that I keep thinking about is last year we talked about that 2-4 start. The bullpen was a big reason for that 2-4 start. Matt Quatraro started shuffling roles in game 6, or maybe it was game 5 even. I can't remember. But if you remember, Will Smith almost blew a save, and James MacArthur was warming up behind him in the first week of the season. So the encouraging thing is I don't think they're afraid to make a move quickly. I think that they understand that a bullpen kind of forms itself over time, and they might have to make these moves. But if they can get those 3 or 4 guys that you can count on every single time out, and of course everybody gives up a run, so it's not every single time, but 95% of the time, then I think you feel pretty good that they're going to figure it out. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to drop too many games before they do, because then again, you get in that hole.
Couple of things. Sam Long was struck on the hand. I think a batted ball. It was a comebacker in spring training that had him down for a little bit. And then, I think when there are options. The question is how fast do you go to them?
Yeah.
Right. For the fans, it's one bad outing. I'm done with them. Bring me somebody new. All of a sudden you're Caesar laying, bring me a new jester, one that amuses me, like you just think that there's this endless supply of people to come out and, grab the ball and go. And it doesn't necessarily work like that. And you don't want to blow out a guy who you think is just off a little bit, needs a couple of sessions with Brian Sweeney, can get back on track and be a really useful part. And so I think that's going to be the part, is how many games, and with this tougher schedule, can you go as long as you would like to try to get guys going back in the right direction, right? I think that is going to be one of the things that's going to be tricky and will be interesting to watch is how long do they stay with a Sam Long? Does he hit the DL? I mean, I think everybody does a pretty good job of creating the mystery injury to then get him down for some, minor league rehab innings. And so I wouldn't be shocked if something like that happens along the way. But you're right. I mean, one of the reasons why we did like the bullpen is the depth. I'm glad you brought that up, because we do feel like there's options. The question is just how fast do you go to those options? The other one is Carlos Hernandez was a big conversation. You and I talked about it on the radio show. I talked about it with Rany. And that is, what is Carlos Hernandez? Is this a mistake to go get an inning, couple of runs? So far, not impressive for Philadelphia. So if your reaction was, well, damn, they should have kept Hernandez, it hasn't been good for Hernandez, albeit just one inning, but it's just a couple of games for these guys. So We'll be tracking it all year. I mean,
Yeah.
it was a tough decision for them, and it's one that I think they would gather. I mean, I don't think they stayed with him for so long because they didn't think that there was ability there. They know there's ability there. They just felt like they've gone as far as they can go in trying to unlock it. And I think that they now don't have to unlock it with him because of all the depth you just mentioned. I think they've got other guys. It's just a question of when do you pull the trigger on going and getting them.
Well, yeah, and the thing about, and I know people will say, who cares? But on Stratton and Long, you can't send them down.
Right.
Because
It's
Stratton
a
is a
permanent
veteran.
decision.
Yeah. So one, and I mean, probably not really. Stratton's going to clear, well, Stratton will become a free agent, but Long would probably clear waivers, but you don't know. So, teams' inventory is important. And I know that we scoff a little bit when they say it, but it is true. It's good to have. And so if those are the guys who are really struggling, you can't just say, oh, we're going to flip Sam Long and Evan Sisk, because Sam Long doesn't have options left. So, that's where it gets. That could be where the IL stint comes in, but that's where it gets tricky for the Royals, and that's why you like to have relievers with options. They don't have a lot, honestly. The ones who do, you're not going to send down. Urseg, you're not sending him down. So, it's they've put themselves in a spot where they're going to have to make some tough decisions. But again, the encouraging thing is, over the last couple of years, we've seen they have made those decisions. They haven't always been right, but they have been willing to make the tough decision, which I don't think we saw before JJ Picollo took over for a long time. So that's encouraging.
Let's go back to Thursday's game, the opener, when Lucas Urseg is summoned in the seventh inning for 2 outs and just 2 outs. He gets those 2 outs, high leverage. It's something that we've heard them. That's what they wanted out of Estevez, was to have a ninth inning guy so that they could deploy Urseg where they wanted to use him. Harvey for the 8th, Estevez for the 9th. Everybody does their job, but they're still in a tie game because they don't get runs. But are you okay with that being the strategy, and are you optimistic that it's going to work?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with that. You want to bring in Urseg against the 2-3 hitters in a lineup that doesn't have a lot beyond 5. Yeah, I'm fine with that. My complaint, and it's a small complaint, is I probably, knowing there was an off day the next day, I probably would have left Urseg in for the 8th. I would have said, and then look, maybe he doesn't like a second inning, and I don't know that. So it could be that maybe they don't like how he does after he's been down and then back up. But assuming that he's okay, I probably would have said, hey, you're going to pitch the 8th also, Estevez for the 9th, and then you've got Harvey in the 10th, which on opening day, at that point, people haven't seen Harvey succeed. So I think most people are probably worried about that after last season, what we saw from him. But that's where I would have gone a little differently. But, I don't have a problem with using your best reliever in Urseg against the best part of their lineup in late inning situations. I think that makes sense. I think that that's, in the long run, that is going to win the Royals more games than it doesn't. It's just by pulling him so quickly, I feel like you kind of wasted the bullets. Not wasted, but he had more in him. And then you would have had, and you're obviously not managing for the 10th inning necessarily, but I think you would have had somebody better than Long for that inning. I understand why they went to Long. He gets strikeouts better than anybody who was left in the bullpen. At least he did last year. And with a runner on second, you want strikeouts. It just didn't work out for him. But I would rather have Hunter Harvey getting strikeouts than Sam Long. And so,
I want to be clear, and because I want to be willing to say I'm wrong. Kudos to Matt Quatraro, Brian Sweeney, the pitching brain trust there for the Royals, JJ and his whole staff. If they get this right, I don't think the fireman thing works. I think I think it looks good on paper. I think it looks good in Stratomatic. I think it looks good, swapping numbers. But I think I watched enough of 14 and 15 to think that the warm-up routine is really important to get the best out of a reliever. And it worked here, and I hope it continues to work. If it does work, if they can make it work, and if they've got Urseg to where he can get warm and be ready to go and be the best version of him, but he wasn't the best version of himself when used that way last year. So if they've figured that out and they can deploy him this way, I love it. It's ideal. If he can perform at his best in these situations, but I feel like guys do their best when they know the 8th inning's mine, the 7th inning's mine. Toy around with somebody else and close out the games you lead, because I think it's such a gut punch when you blow a lead late. And so I think it's okay, this idea of like, well, we're down 1, we got to stop him here or we're out of this game. So now we're going to deploy Urseg. Or, I think it's okay to get to 7, 8, 9. I think you're going to need 2 of those 3 guys on multiple nights. Guys are going to be going a third time, and you're going to need them. Somebody's going to have to close when Estevez isn't available. Somebody else is going to have to handle it. I just, to me, assign the roles, win the games that you're out in front of, and you're going to be a good baseball team. But I want to point out, they used him exactly the way they wanted to. I know they didn't win, but they didn't win because the offense didn't get him a run over 3 innings. But they used those guys exactly the way they said they wanted to. Not my ideal situation for Urseg, but it worked, and it worked perfectly. And if it does that all year, then I think they're going to be pretty dangerous in this situation. But I don't love it.
Don't you think, and I totally see what you're saying, but don't you think that if you tell Urseg, hey, be prepared, look at the lineup, you're going to get Jose Ramirez. Whenever that comes up after the 6th inning, that's when you're going in. So he can prepare for that, right? I mean, isn't that...
If that's the message. Do you think that's the message? Because that's not what I saw last year. I saw nobody up. They did it that way last year, no. I saw nobody up, and I saw them, if that's what it is, this is your spot in the lineup, then of course, absolutely. It's not about getting a clean inning for me. I'm with you on that. I want to be clear. It's not about the clean inning as much as it is the prep time. Although I think the clean inning probably helps.
It helps all of them, for sure.
But if it's like come hell or high water, no one on or bases juiced, when Jose Ramirez comes up, you're my guy. And you can look and be like, I got the song. Okay, here we go. Let's go with Mariano Rivera. By the way, for those that are listening and wondering what I'm doing, I'm going through a stretching routine here. If you're catching me the video,
it probably would sound awkward without video.
the little bands that Mariano Rivera does to warm up the shoulder and get everything going. As long as you can do whatever it is you need to do. But I watched Herrera do that, Davis do that, Holland do that, and they were nails, nails, nails. And I watched Rivera do it for a lifetime. And I think it works. I think there's something to it. And so, but listen, if they perfected it, great. I think it'll be absolutely ideal for this ball club. All right, we'll talk about shuffling positions here. First, we want to let you hear from our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance. David Starnes Allstate Insurance, serving the Kansas City area and all throughout the Midwest. With David Starnes Allstate, it's not just about fender benders. Beyond traditional safeguards, enjoy perks like roadside assistance for unexpected breakdowns, transportation expense coverage when your car is in the shop, auto replacement protection to keep you on the road in style, and much more. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations, including North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, proudly serving the greater Kansas City area. Nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Locally owned and making parking lot problems disappear in Kansas City since 1994. Let Gann educate you about the most cost-effective way to solve your parking lot problems. With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty, Gann Asphalt keeps your parking lot safer and helps you and your business avoid unnecessary delays and costly expenses. Find Gann online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. All right, David, let's talk a little bit about the Royals and how they're shuffling the positions around. Are they getting it right? Do you like what you see? We can throw in Jonathan India in left field, how he looks here. We saw Michael Garcia start at third, go to center field. Is what they were building towards. Is it going to work?
Well, it hasn't so far. I will say India, I saw him in Arizona. It was, I wouldn't say a disaster. I would say an adventure. He didn't miss any plays while I was there. It's just the routes he took would make Noriaoki blush, I think. So there was one that I need to look actually because StatCast didn't surprise. So I'm sure they had the route, but it would not have been pretty. Opening day, he went out there in the late innings and he made a couple nice plays, nice read on a ball. Saturday, I didn't see any issues with him. Today, he misplayed that ball. And it's the hardest ball. It's the hardest ball to field as an outfielder when you don't know what you're doing. This Santana line drive, he broke in. Every outfielder does it when they're first playing outfield. The problem is that he's first playing outfield on a playoff contending team in the regular season. against the team that won the division last year. So hasn't worked out so well so far. Garcia didn't really get a chance in center today, I don't think. Although I thought he looked good in spring training. I didn't really see him challenge except for one ball that the wind took, and he still caught it. So, who knows on that. But yeah, I mean, it would be helpful if India could take to left, which we'll see, or they stop shuffling guys around so much, because I can see that being a real problem down the road. And I don't know that they lost today because of that. I don't know that they didn't lose today because of the missed fly ball. I mean, that did end up scoring a run. So game changes. Everything changes. It doesn't exactly happen the same way. But I could see them losing a game because of Jonathan India in left field. And, they don't have a lot of games they can lose. It's Matt Quatraro says it all the time. They're on really thin margins.
I think that's a great way to look at it. And for me, I mean, I guess the experiment can continue on into the regular season. I don't know. I kind of feel like you either can or can't judge a fly ball. But that comes from a guy who can't. Okay. So I don't track the ball well. Neither does McCole Hardman. Okay. So that's a guy who can't track a football, let alone a baseball. And football's traveling at half the velocity that a baseball is. And so when you watch a guy who struggles on a football that has not gotten better, and they send him back for punts, and he routinely, even though he's one of the fastest guys on the field, lets the ball drop in front of him. I don't bring that up to turn this into our Red, Gold, and Bowl podcast. I bring that up to say that I think some of it is just instinctual. Some of it is just something you can't teach. Can he get better? Of course he can get better. And can good coaching make the most of him? Yes. But if you don't see the ball off the bat, if you don't track it well, I don't know how good you're going to be. And so I think they need to be good defensively. And I think this is where I will come to maybe my first criticism here. And that is, let me say potential criticism, because I don't want to see him make a trade just to make a trade for trade's sake. I don't want to see him overpay for some bad outfielder just to get an outfielder. But you've got a mountain of catchers. Okay. Yeah. You've got all these catchers that right now, and listen, out of all the guys in the minor leagues, they're not all going to be good. I mean, some of them are going to just be backup humps, and some of them are not even going to be that. They're going to get up and they're not going to hit, and their glove tool isn't what everybody's supposedly a pretty good defensive catcher in the minor leagues. Then they get to the big leagues, because framing rate sucks. He can't block anything. And, we dive in, and when they're catching big league stuff, it gets harder. And so they've got all this catching depth, and one off season, no one dealt. None of them. And so I would like to see, and you've got infield depth, no one dealt. Go acquire a guy who has played outfield his entire career. It's a noble effort to go ahead and try India out there. But how about get an outfielder to play the outfield? And that's going to be my frustration. If we go through this and they had opportunities and they have resources to go make a move and they didn't do it, that's going to be frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, and this was a weird offseason. I'll say that. I thought, there were 10 guys who were sure to get traded. Arenado stayed in St. Louis. That's a little bit different. But how many times did we hear Taylor Ward was on the verge of getting traded? Royals or not, who cares? It doesn't matter. Never happened. And teams just didn't move guys. And so now you're in the regular season where I'm trying to look at the teams and who is willing to trade quickly. Who's willing to make that early trade, like the Marlins when they traded Luis Arraez? And the answer is probably the Marlins. They're one. The White Sox would trade, but do they have anybody?
Listen, by the way, I just did my fantasy baseball weekend in San Diego, Bob, by the way. Hence my sweet new hoodie. Yeah, it's a beautiful ballpark. Love it. But there is nobody on the Marlins.
No.
And there's nobody on the White Sox. It took deep study to figure out who the hell was playing where and where the hell they came from.
Mm-hmm.
To figure out the Marlins, to their credit, there are a bunch of guys that he was acquired in this trade. He was acquired in that trade. But you're right. There isn't the ready-made guy now, but in the offseason or even in the minor leagues, this is where Gavin Cross really needs to get his crap together.
Yep.
He needs to be an answer to come up and be. He was an outfielder. He was drafted to play outfield. That's what he plays. He needs to be the answer, not Jack Caglione, frankly, which may end up ultimately being their answer, but it better be short term, in my opinion. But they need to be able to identify, draft, and develop outfielders. And if not, they need to be able to identify, trade for, and finish the development of outfielders. You can trade for an outfielder in the minor leagues as well.
Yeah. No, and the other, when you talk about in their system, I know that you're not a fan of him, but Tyler Gentry is a guy who plays a decent corner outfield. I'm not saying that you want to give him the keys to left field for 6 years, but I mean, I don't know. A guy, what did he do? There was I'm looking it up right now, trying to remember. 2 years ago in the minors and across high A and double A. So grain of salt, 326, 422, 542. The Royals need to be smart about this and say, okay, we recognize now that Tyler Gentry has gotten hot. Let's ride it for 3 weeks. I'm not saying you're going to look up and see him do that in the majors. I wouldn't predict that in any way, shape, or form. I don't know that he'd hit 250, 300, 400 in 600 plate appearances. But if you're telling me that he can't get hot for 3 weeks and hit major league pitching, yeah, they need to figure out, they need to treat that spot like a bullpen spot, I think, until they can fill it in the long term and say, look, Tyler Gentry's hitting, he's up. John Rave is hitting, he's up. I don't believe in either of them long term, but they're going to have to look at that and get the timing right on these guys and just play the hot hand until they can until Taylor Ward gets traded or until whoever gets moved, because they need to get a real outfielder. They need to get somebody who can catch the ball and who isn't a zero offensively. That's where they are.
I think you make a great point, and what is frustrating to me is how come they can't bring a guy up and have him be, okay, great, he's not ideal, but at least be serviceable. Like they seem to bring guys up and they're just absolute gaping holes, just like there's nothing, it's just like this chasm of nothing for production, right? Like they can't have a guy come up and be 235, 305, 395, right? Get you to 700 on the OPS. And it's like, okay, it's not just a disaster when we get there. It's not just a certified out, right? And, like I mentioned being in San Diego, like Jose Iglesias came into the game for Manny Machado yesterday when we were at it. It was the Padres and Braves, and Machado tweaked. He was back in there today, but he tweaked a calf or something on a swing, and Jose Iglesias came in. I said, man, there's nothing like having a certified out in your 3-hole. And he was. It was like it was the weakest contact you've ever seen when he did make contact, and he didn't make much contact. I feel like so often, and that's a guy who made their club. But I was like, I even said, this is who the Royals call up. Like it's a guy like this that they're hoping is going to be a hit prospect, but he doesn't come up because this is what he ends up looking like, right? Yeah. And so, it just jumped at me like, why can't you have a guy that maybe it's a little bit early, but he at least can survive, and maybe not even he can do more than survive. He's not ready to thrive, but he's going to give you a major league at bat. And I think part of it stems to the fact that they haven't, the ability to work the count and identify the strike zone has never been their number one calling card. They've been pumping up guys that are toolsy guys that are trying to learn how to identify.
And that is changing somewhat.
It is.
In the philosophy, but it takes time.
Publicly, they're saying it. They're saying all the right things. I think the finished products like Jonathan India that they're acquiring look like it. The Kevin Biggios, who they're acquiring to be the mortar pieces around the bricks, look like they're going down that road, but they have to be able to develop it as well.
To your point, that guy, Dairon Blanco.
Yeah.
He's come up, forget 22. He had 7 plate appearances, but the last 2 seasons, 258, 316, 422. He can't, he's terrible defensively, which is shocking given his speed. But yeah, I mean, maybe you give Blanco more playing time. Maybe you give him a shot for a while. Maybe Joey Weimer hits. I don't know. I wouldn't predict that. I think that there's all the potential in the world. He's the guy the Royals have developed forever, is athletes who can't get on base, but maybe they figure something out with him. But yeah, you want the guy who's come up and been fine. It's Dairon Blanco. They've actually done it. It's just they don't use him that much, and maybe he wouldn't be fine if he got 400 plate appearances. Maybe he's perfectly suited for 150, 200 plate appearances and stealing 30 bags a year off the bench, but he at least has done it.
Are you satisfied with the quality of at-bats that they're getting, the caliber of at-bats that they're getting?
It's 3 games, so that caveat, but no. I looked it up. I made some notes. So today, they chased less than 25% of the time, and it's funny. I'm watching the game today, and I'm going, they look less jumpy. They didn't get any hit. It was they didn't hit, so it looked bad in the end. But it did feel like they weren't chasing as much. But they chased 19 out of 77 pitches out of the zone. First 2 games, 37% chase rate, and that's it's 2 games. It can happen to anybody, any pitchers, any opponents, whatever. But overall, no. And I need to dig in a little deeper. I think they've been swinging at bad strikes too a little bit, because not every strike is worth swinging at. Not every ball is worth taking, but not every strike is worth swinging at. But they, at least today, stopped chasing. So I wonder a little bit if there was some early season jumpiness. That's something we'll find out. But yeah, the quality of the bat has not been good. It was better today.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that you want them to strive for. Like, I keep waiting for the defense to become nails. I think that's one of the, and they have in some places.
Yeah.
But that's a hallmark of how the Rays play. Versatility is a hallmark, but they don't do it they don't sacrifice defense to do it. And then, working the count. That's something that everybody's, wants their hitters to do. And I think it's still a work in progress for the Royals. And I think that might be the last thing that we're watching. And it might just be that, look, turning the Titanic, or I shouldn't say the Titanic, turning a cruise ship, right? Like, takes time.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop on a dime. It takes time to get it going to where you want it. And so, yeah, I think it could be as simple as that. That's what we're hoping for.
But right? You look at the lineup. India takes pitches. Vinny, he is not taking pitches the way that we thought he was going to, but he has that potential. The biggest surprise to me, Michael Massey. He didn't chase in spring training very much, and that's kind of the next step for him in his game too, right? He makes decent contact. He has some pop. He didn't chase in spring training. He hasn't chased really in 3 games. That's a big improvement for him. Garcia does a great job of that. Obviously, Biggio when he plays, Canna when he finally plays. They've got some guys who will take pitches. They've got some guys who will give a tough at bat. They just need to do it consistently because, yeah, you're right. That is part of what good teams do. They look at what the Guardians did. The Guardians' offense is not impressive, but they don't swing at bad pitches.
Right.
And they make you work, and that's what killed the Royals this weekend.
How much of it is that they haven't valued power enough? I was reading, like I said, I was just doing all my fantasy baseball stuff. There were a couple of guys you come across, you read the people you trust, and it's like, well, his walk rate was this. And I'm talking about prospects. So we were doing our prospect draft, and it's like, but then he hit, 12 home runs in, 2 months, and his walk rate went up because they started to respect the power. Mm-hmm. Like, we're always looking for them to do a better job working the count, and that hopefully that'll turn into the power. They've always been toolsy and want the, first to third and first to home over the guy who can hit the ball over the wall. Jack Caglione clearly is a change in that mindset. But how much of it is just they have not prioritized and do not bring guys along? They're always so conscious of talking about hitting doubles and not home runs. And doubles don't make pitchers wet themselves on the mound. Doubles don't make pitchers, nibble 12 inches off the plate instead of 2 inches off the plate. How much of it just the battery's been a little bit in backwards, and it's the power that gives you the ability to work the count, to identify the pitches, because the pitches get easier to identify when they're afraid of your power.
It's a good point. Look at Bobby Witt. Look at the walk rate. It is gone up each of his 3 seasons. Last year, what did he get to 8? Was it? I think it was. That's when pitchers respect you, they stop throwing you strikes, and then the onus is on the hitter. Obviously, they're not swinging them. Salvador Perez has never gotten to that point, but he was 8% last year, 4.7 his rookie year, 5.8 2023, 8% last year. Now, some of that was when Vinny got hurt in the last month of the season, but they pitch. The walk rate can sometimes come later, and look, maybe that's part of Massey's improvement is that pitchers saw, hey, we can't lay one in there. He's going to hit it over the wall. So we're not going to throw him that pitch that we threw him last year too many times. And he's decided I'm not going to swing at it, which that could be part of it. Not that he's a huge power hitter, but he had mistakes last year. So I think that that's a really good point. Hopefully they've turned that a little bit with drafting a guy like Caglione. It didn't work out, hasn't worked out. Nelson Velasquez, going and getting him. I know it was a minor trade and who cares, but he is not a guy the Royals typically went after previously. Right. So, maybe there is that turning of the tide, but yeah, and they need to stop saying, hey, the ballpark suppresses power, so we're not going to try to do it. And they don't say it publicly as much anymore, thankfully, but they believe it. Kauffman Stadium is a hard park to hit a home run in. It is one of the hardest in baseball. You cannot argue that. That is a fact, but you also can't use that as a crutch to not go get guys who can hit the ball over the wall, because it's possible to do it, and they need to do more of it.
We're always brought to you, of course, by our friends at David Starnes Allstate Insurance and, of course, Northland Injury Law. Northland Injury Law, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, serving KC for more than 40 years, voted Kansas City's #1 accident lawyers, helping people with serious injuries from car accidents, work accidents, falls, and other personal injuries. Northland Injury Law doesn't get paid unless they get money for their client. Don't wait, get compensated now. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222. That's HURT to 22222, or call 816-400-HURT. That's 816-400-4878. The choice of a lawyer is an important one and should not be based solely upon advertisements. David Starnes Allstate Insurance. Elevate your coverage, elevate your confidence, and drive worry-free. Covering all the important things in your world: home, business, life, and even the fun stuff, as well as your motorcycle, boat, ATV, and you name it. Get with Dave and he'll get you covered. You can give Dave and his crew a call at 816-781-7331. Visit them online or stop into any of their locations: North Kansas City, Liberty, and Branson, Missouri. Don't put those insurance needs off any longer. Get with Dave today. He'll give you peace of mind for the things in your life most important to you. David Starnes, Allstate Insurance. All right, let's talk a little bit about the fact that they do steam to still die hard. David, I mean, that is one of the things that we saw from them last year. They don't go easy into the good night, and that does, at least that's the encouraging sign with the win. I know if you want to be negative, it's like, well, they lost the 2 games around it, and they could have lost. Yeah, that's baseball. You woulda, coulda, shoulda. I mean, at the end of the day,
could have won on Thursday too.
That's right. You are what your record says you are. They're 1-2, right? So, but they are looking like they're going to be a team that still battles.
Yeah. I mean, look, opening day, they got a blown save off Emmanuel Clase. He blew 3 saves last year. He gave up 5 runs last year. He gave up a run on opening day. That's impressive. Obviously, Saturday came back to get that win against a good bullpen. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, but that's a good bullpen. And today, I mean, yeah, they were facing the bottom of their bullpen, but they were down 6-0, and they had the tying run at the plate. I'm not. You don't get wins. You don't get credit for that. You don't get special consideration at the end of the year when you're 4 games out of the playoffs for that. But that mindset is big to me. I go back to 2023 when they were losing 100. What did they lose? 106 games. That's a team that they finished strong, and I know we've seen it so many times in Royals history. Oh, they finished strong, they're going to be good next year. Did happen in 2024. But I think it speaks really well to the leadership of this team. And I said it then, and people kind of poo-pooed it. But then you saw what the White Sox did last year. That team quit. These guys can quit, and the Royals haven't, and they don't, which I think is a great quality to have. They're going to need to win some more games, obviously. You want to win on Thursday instead of tie it and then not win, which, by the way, speaking of Kauffman Stadium, Michael Massey's sacrifice fly is a home run in 20 ballparks. That's a walk-off home run in 20 out of 30 ballparks, just not the one they were playing in. But yeah, it's a good quality to have, and if they can smooth over some of the issues that are they're big, but they're not unbeatable, that quality will win them some games this year. It's similar to what it did last year.
Let's talk about the Torpedo Bat, because in the chat room, we've already got a couple of folks that are leading us to it. Kurt says, I hope the Royals have already placed an express order on Torpedo Bats. Kansas City Moose says Torpedo Bats work great when Aaron Judge is batting. Problem is, Kansas City Moose, Aaron Judge doesn't use one. Right? Yeah. He's not one that's using it. And Kid Dynamite pointed that out, by the way. Didn't mean to take the words out of your mouth. But Kansas City Moose is right when it still takes a hitter, right? This is not the magic elixir. Michael Garcia is not going to hit 40 home runs if you put a torpedo bat in. If people don't know what it is, they've basically taken the bat, and if you think of a torpedo, which is, its fattest part is in the middle, it's not uniform. It kind of grows out. I'm doing a demonstration. I don't know how to try to do it.
I might have something that looks like it.
Goes out and then comes narrower. So the barrel of the bat is not uniform once it gets to it doesn't get to its widest point. The old school bat is you had the handle and then it got to the barrel, and the barrel was the same diameter all the way the rest of the length to the end of the bat. And now the torpedo bat gets a little bit thicker in a spot, and they move it based upon where. By move it, I mean it doesn't move like let's adjust the bat. They
that would be cool.
They shape the bat based upon where your most frequency of contact is to try to give you a bigger barrel spot and the place on the barrel where you most frequently contact the baseball. And that's what the analytics people came up with the Yankees, and this is what they're off to a good. They had 20 runs yesterday, I think it was. Yeah. And so with
12 more today.
4 home runs in the first inning. It was a big discussion tonight on Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN. What do you think of the torpedo bat? And is it? I mean, clearly, I think everybody's got to be running to look and see can we benefit from it, right?
Yeah, I saw Ryan Jeffers used it today from the Twins. There was somebody else I saw. It's interesting. It makes a lot of sense. It's legal, apparently. I sent you this. I don't know who this is from LinkedIn, of all places, but
yeah.
MLB bats must be made from one piece of solid wood, be no more than 2.61 inches in diameter at their thickest part, and not exceed 42 inches in length. That's it. That's the criteria. I didn't.
By the way, isn't it amazing nobody has tinkered with the bat? Like, if
that was my thought.
If you go to the Hall of Fame, I mean, Babe Ruth swung a bat that no one could get around on modern pitching today. It was a club. I mean, it looked like something Bam Bam from the Flintstones, and I know I'm dating myself here, but it literally was like a caveman club looking thing. And, they refined it, brought the barrel down to make it smaller to get more, wrist action, more whip coming through. All these different things. We've seen the axe handle. I mean, I remember when that was a thing a little while, and there's still a few.
They hollowed out the top at one point.
Yeah, doing that they thought, it's, whatever it was that it was doing. So there's been some little tweaks here and there, but just doesn't this seem kind of like, well, duh, what took so long?
Right. Yeah. It when I first saw that, I actually had a friend who's a baseball fan, but not like a fanatic, text me and he goes, first of all, how is this legal? Second of all, why has no other team ever thought about this? And I'm like, I don't know. It's one of those things that you go, well, maybe nobody ever thought that they could change it. I don't know why they never thought about it, but it's legal. It clearly makes sense. I was listening to MLB Network Radio this morning, and Jim Bowden was talking about, oh gosh, I can't remember who it was, but he had a center fielder who he said just literally they'd look at the bat and it would the ball, you could see the ball just an inch and a half below the barrel every single time, and they're like, just move back an inch, to figure something out. Well, yeah, with all this technology now, you're able to see where the ball most often hits the bat. I mean, if you've examined the new StatCast stat where you can see the point of contact and where they stand in the box and the foot placement, which is just, you can get lost in that for hours. I'm speaking from experience here, but we can see that technology now to see where the ball is actually impacting the bat. And why wouldn't you move the barrel? Why wouldn't you put more barrel in the spot that you typically make contact? It makes perfect sense. And look, what's today? March 30th? Is that right? Say March 30th? Yeah, March 30th. I would be surprised if by April 15th, you don't see 30% of the league using that bat, 25%, somewhere in there, because it clearly makes a difference when you have the data to back it up. And I wonder, maybe that's part of it. Hey, look, we don't have the data to say that we should be moving the barrel on this bat, and now we do, so let's do it. Maybe that's a big reason, but the data is clearly there.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think we'll see a lot of people going to that and try it, but I wonder how long the Yankees have been finding the right spot on it. Like I don't
Yeah,
think
who
this
knows?
is something they just did over a couple of weeks in spring training. Were they working on this all last year, and then all through the all winter ball, and all with hitters that they weren't really worried about what the results were to see if it really worked? Like how much time have they put into it? Is it something where it's almost like racing? If you're a racing fan, one team gets it figured out, and it takes everybody else, a whole year of wind tunnel testing and all this kind of stuff to figure it out. Are we getting to that point now with some of the technology, and does it take everybody a year to catch up? I don't know. I'm sure everybody in baseball that's not already doing it is scrambling towards it. We might also find that, other people will say, well, yeah, we tried it and it doesn't work. Like I know the Yankees are just hot right now, but just wait 6 months from now at the end of the year, you can be like, yeah, there's no difference.
It's also 73 feet to left in Yankee Stadium and 71 feet to right. So that helps too.
Yeah.
Although they were hitting some tanks.
Yeah, they were. All right. Let's talk about the upcoming schedule. What do you think? Milwaukee for 3, and then home for 3 with the Orioles. The next Kaufman Corner podcast, we'll be doing one Thursday morning, you, me, and Les. But the next time, Sunday, when Randy and I get together, what do you think we're going to be talking about after these next 6 games?
I think the offense will pick up a little bit. They get the back of rotations finally, which that's the other thing. First week of the season, you're getting the front of a rotation. That's not to say that you shouldn't score runs. The Guardians scored runs. They did fine. But they get the Brewers 4 and 5 starters, and they don't even have a 4 and 5 starter right now. Honestly, they're waiting on injury guys, and then they get Freddie Peralta, and then they go. Baltimore comes in. I think right now it's Cade Povich, Dean Kramer, and I'm blanking on the Sagano. I don't want to even try to say his first name because that might become a problem. But they don't get 1 and 2s other than Peralta, so that'll help. It's just hard to know what a team is yet at this point because we have so little data to look at. I think they have a better week though. I think, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 3 and 3 and it's not like markedly better, but I think the bats will pick up a little bit as they get to face a little bit lesser pitching.
Yeah. I don't know that I've been this excited. And who said it? Somebody mentioned Bubic in here.
I want to see Sagano left to start. I didn't see Sagano left to start either. So
yeah, Tyler said Bubic's first outing is a big one. I agree, it's a big one. I do agree, absolutely with that statement. I don't want to make too much of it. If he gets roughed, it doesn't mean it's over and back to the bullpen he goes. But I'm genuinely excited about what Chris Bubic could do. I was genuinely excited 2 years ago. Love that he was tinkering with some pitches because I've always said, this to this, and all of a sudden you're a Cy Young winner. I mean, like you look at guys like just a little bit of a change in where the pressure point is on the baseball, and all of a sudden it's darting and diving, and they've got a new pitch. I remember just watching Tony Gwynn in an All-Star game talk about Darryl Kyle, and it was funny. They were sitting side by side, and he's like, and then the Astros were still in the NL, so they were teammates. He's like, yeah, well, Darryl's he's doing this, and Kyle kind of looked at him. He's like, yeah, I know what's up. And Darryl Kyle had been kind of like okay, and then all of a sudden he became for 2 or 3 years, a 20-game winning, top of the rotation type of guy, and it was just a little bit of a tweak. And Tony Gwynn had picked up on it. He was one of the great hitting minds of all time. But I mean, Chris Bubic seemed to have found that tweak, and was headed towards it. Then he blew out right away, and you wonder how much the wear and tear of working on whatever he was tweaking led to that. Then he comes back. He carries the incredible ability to spot the baseball. Still has the movement, and now it seemed like through spring training he was still carrying forward the caliber of stuff that he brought to the back end on short stints. That I'm really excited. I think that could be the difference maker. If he is a top of the rotation guy, you've got 2 top lefties, separate out there. Man, that's exciting for Royals fans. It's exciting for me.
I mean, even if he's a 3. Or even if he's a 3 or a good 4, that's huge for the rotation. Look, they had a good 4 last year in Brady Singer. That's what carried the team. What I like about Bubic, I'm excited to see. I want to see how the fastball plays in the 5th inning after 4 innings of work. Like we saw the velocity popped up in the bullpen a little bit, which is great, and it usually does. I want to see how he carries it, but I also want to see the movement profile of it because his fastball went from pretty hittable to the changes that he made. The movement made it much tougher to hit. And so that can help with when the velocity decreases over 80, 90 pitches, whatever it is. But yeah, I'm excited to see if he can pick up where he left off before the elbow blew out, because I remember watching that game against the Giants in 2023, and I was a combination, and most people may not totally understand my emotion here, but I think you will. I was a combination of really excited and kind of angry that it took 3 years to see a guy who could do what he did. That was the game he struck out 9 over 6 innings. And it was so fun to watch. And the next start was the one that he got lit up by the Braves, and it was cold. And then next time we saw him was July of last year. So I'm really excited to see how he does. I think he's a huge key to this season. If he can be Brady Singer or better, 2024 Brady Singer or better, this team is going to be fine. If he struggles, well, they got to find somebody else, and he can go back and be a big part of the bullpen. But he has a chance to really completely change the fortunes of the season for the Royals.
Yeah, no doubt. David, great stuff from you. It's a pleasure. I look forward to talking with you on Thursday, my friend.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, David Lesky, if you didn't hear, if you're catching us midstream here, David Lesky and Les Norman will joining me. Thursday mornings is when we'll stream live. You can catch it on the podcast a few minutes after it's done, about a half hour after the live podcast is done. So we'll be going twice a week here on the Kaufman Corner. And, of course, you can always support the Kaufman Corner by supporting our great partners, our sponsors, David Starnes, Allstate Insurance, the best. I can tell you what, David Starnes and his great staff are helping me work through some insurance questions. You can give them a call like I did at 816-781-7331. That's 816-781-7331. Happy to help you. Their customer service is unbelievable. So hit them up with any questions you have. Our friends at Gann Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Don't let your attention be taken off of your business to avoid unnecessary delays, costly expenses, liability problems. Get a brightly striped lot. A smooth lot makes a great first and last impression. Gann Asphalt and Concrete can give it to you. One contractor, all things parking lot. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com. Should you find yourself in an accident, of course, Kansas City's Google 5-star rated personal injury lawyers, Northland Injury Law, serving Kansas City for more than 40 years. Voted Casey's #1 accident lawyers. If you have a case, text HURT to 22222 or call 816-400-HURT for David Lesky and our buddy Rany Jazayerli, who is off traveling. He'll be back next Sunday. My name is Soren Petro saying thank you very much for joining us here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.